Hi, welcome to ThinkTech. We are raising public awareness about technology, energy, globalism, and diversification. This show is Community Matters, and I am not Jay Fidel. I am Donna Blanchard, your host for the day. I'm very happy to be here talking with you. I want to let you know that we stream our shows live every weekday from noon to 5 on thinktechhawaii.com and also on ustream.tv and Spreaker.com. I would like to introduce you to our guest today. His name is Bob Kane, and Bob leads the a course at Iolani School called Journey with the Dying, and it's a course in hospice care. Thank you very much for being here, Bob.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, happy to have the opportunity to talk with you. This is rare for me. My show is called Center Stage. I interview artists every week. Well. So
I'm learning how to play the violin. So.
There's an art. Then we have lots to talk about. If it ever starts to go dead during our conversation, I'll just ask you about the violin.
That's right.
I probably shouldn't have said it that way. Already,
Ooh.
I've done it already. Oh my goodness. This conversation, okay, so Jay had to go elsewhere to change the world, whatever he's doing today, and asked me to step in, and I said, sure, of course I'll help you out. And right at the get-go, the topic sounded very interesting to me. The more I read about you, the more I read the information, I realized I'm a little intimidated about this conversation.
Oh.
And it's because I haven't stopped to think about hospice and care for dying and going through the dying process with people, except for those times in my life when people close to me have died. And then you come out to the other end of that tunnel and slowly work your way back into regular life. And very often you don't look back until something in your mind or your heart or your home, forces you to look at it again. And you grit your teeth and you deal with, this is my experience, you grit your teeth and you deal with it and you move through it, and you don't look at it again until you have to.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you
that.
say to that? Yes.
Well, it didn't obviously used to be that way. And it isn't that's not one of those good old days statements, like, well, and back in the day when it was this, it was positive, and now today it's terrible. But it didn't used to be that way because death and dying processes weren't considered something other than what happens in your life. They were part of life. They were in your face kind of life. I mean, my father, who has died over 10 years ago now, and my mom too, both of them were born at a time. My father was born 1916. My father 1916. Sorry, my mother 1917, and they experienced the death of their siblings at a very young age. My father was one of 4 boys. He also had a sister who was the firstborn, and she died of diphtheria at a very young age. And this wasn't something where it would have been a newspaper account. It's terrible that you lost a child, but most people did. All right, now, thank God, it's changed, and through medicine and everything else, it's more of a rarity to lose a child. Right, we have incredible resources in pediatrics to be able to change that, and also in education. So that's on the one axis a good thing. On the other axis, as we have started to become much more medically managed society, even though our healthcare issues are what they are, we still are quite well off medically. Our longevity is increasing, but also our ability or our comfort level, or I think our experience, which drives comfort levels and ability. Our experience with the dying and the dying process has become less and less of a reality. We know we're all going to die, like you say. Well, you get through it, and then you get back to this thing called life, and then, oh, somebody's going to die. Then you have to go through it. So we've compartmentalized it as that thing that happens that we don't want to talk about, we don't want to go near to, and we know when it does happen, oh boy, there it is. But it is somehow outside of the arena of life. And it's not. It's a part of life. So on the farm, you're going to eat, you take a chicken, you kill the chicken gives its life for you, you make it into whatever dish you want to, and you consume it. But life was there, and you took that life, and you saw what happened, and so it's right there, you're touching death, all right? Now, for me, many people laid out in my house as a man of Irish descent. So my grandparents were in their coffins in our living room for the 3-day wake. The body was there. I was, 6 when my grandma on my mom's side died, 7 when my grandfather died. And so when I would go up and down stairs during those times, there was my grandfather in the coffin laying there, his body, or there was my grandmother's body. Well, today, that can freak people out. To me, it was very natural. So I would say, not only is that my grandfather or my grandmother there, looking through the spokes on the stairwell, down and through, there's my mom crying, kneeling at the side of her mother or her father, okay? Who's, and that's my mom as a daughter to her mother and father, and that's my mom crying. So there's a normalizing process. It doesn't make anything easy. It doesn't take away pain, but it also doesn't hide anything. I never had to grow up worried that there must be something horrifyingly terrible about death and the dying process and all of this, because nobody's talking about it. And as a child, if you hide stuff from children, the first signal is that it's hidden and not talked about because something's wrong with it. So don't go there. So if something's wrong with it and I'm starting to think about it and get worried about it, I've got a problem because it can't be talked about. So I got to find a place to stuff this stuff. And then as you keep getting older and older, you end up stuffing more and more and more until pretty soon you have a problem. And then probably you'll need a therapist. I've been told that I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I've been told, when I started these programs some 20 years ago, in the earlier days, I had some teachers that would say, well, I don't know if we want to really bring this in, because, what if the child is with somebody and they die and, they're going to need counseling, they're going to need this, and it's traumatic, and it's all these things. It is a big deal, yeah. It's a big life event, and we deal with each other. But they're not going to need a counselor in 99.9% of the cases. You need a counselor when you don't talk about this. When you don't interact, when you don't share. Then you have to have somebody to try to open up that can to let it out so we can discuss it. So why not just be normal about it?
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Well, you've pretty much just described my experiences with death through my life so far. Now, I do have to say, at one point we had a death in the family, and my sister, who had 4 children, 3 of them boys, 1 girl, told the kids, and the boys said, oh, okay, Grandma died, and the little girl started bawling her eyes out. And they all had the same, upbringing. They had the same, we talk about death or we don't, within the household. One of them just didn't deal with it as well as the others, or dealt with it more outwardly than the others.
Yeah, and that can be a male versus a female sort of reactivity to grief. Many times males will not show the grief as readily. There's never an always, but oftentimes male grieving is more, you'll see men will pull back and maybe go in and start doing something, working on something, and sometimes people will go, what's the matter with that guy? My God, there's, wife just died, or uncle just died, or father just died, and he's over there working on his car. Isn't he connected to this person? No. That's a very typical way a male will grieve. We end up, we're in here thinking about stuff, doing stuff, and then we'll go over and we'll be doing something, but we're there. We're working through it this way, and we may or may not talk to 1 or 2 or 3 people. Women, not all, but many, seem to have a much more of a facility of gravitating towards a group together and outwardly discussing and hugging and not getting it out, but talking and sharing that way through the process. As our cultures change, those managing ways will probably change to some degree. Luckily, I think males today don't have to feel like they got to be so stoic. And, the old John Wayne thing in my day, you had to be tough and you didn't cry in front of people. And that's pretty passé now, But I think, there's a beauty to this process, and I didn't mention that earlier, and I want to make sure that we don't make this into something that's Edgar Allan Poe-ish and that it's all oh so horrifyingly terrible and a real downer and a bummer. Because there's many societies out there who celebrate the life when the dying person has died and see that as an opportunity to talk about the life, the legacy, the memory, the memorial, and that is a huge thing. So, you know, as much as I could see the crying when I was a kid and growing up through it, lost a lot of people still in my life, we also talk story. And of course, the Irish love to talk story just as much as the Hawaiian people do. And we shared stories and we learned. And as littler people, we learned a lot more about the older people, or places and things they did that we weren't a part of. But we became a part of it through the legacy and the storytelling. So life becomes celebrated this way. And again, that cannot happen, that truly cannot happen, if you're not going to want to talk about it. Yeah? And also, if you are understanding as you live your life, that your life, as I tell my students, is one breath away. Every minute or every nanosecond, whatever, you are as close to death as one breath. That's how close we are. Stop the breath, and you're dead. So we use a candle, and you light the candle, blow the candle out. That's how fragile life is. So if we know that, rather than getting all terrified about that situation, why not say, wow, if life is that fragile and we feel it's also that precious, why wouldn't we want to live in this moment and do the things we need to do and create and maintain the relationships we need to do with one another and cherish those things and not make it as like that John Lennon phrase, it always pops in my mind, you know, what is life? Life is what we do while we're busy making other plans. Why don't we live our life by having the idea of our mortality squarely here and here, but have it as the sugar that can make life sweet. Yeah, we're not going to just be around forever. We're not going to always get second chances. What we have is what we've gotten right now. I don't know if I'll be alive to get my car after this, or even sooner. I hope to be. But bearing that in mind, why not be present with what I have right now and take it all in and make sure I notice everything and therefore live everything. And if we can do that, I think then we don't have these kids that are stressing out in schools, constantly thinking about what's down there, where I have to go over there, and forgetting and not even paying attention to what's here now because for some reason that's relegated as not important. So you've just canceled out your reality for a fantasy. Now that doesn't suggest, I'm not suggesting we don't plan in our lives. Of course we must. And I'm not suggesting we don't look back and learn from our past and keep those records within us, the good and the bad. But all of that is happening whether we want to or not. It's already happened, or whatever's going to happen is going to transpire as time moves on. What we have is right now. This is all we've got in our life. This is our life as it is in this moment. You know? And then whatever other moments you'll have, you may or may not have them. So why not look at death as something, as a way to remind us how important it is to live, because death in the dying process is a part of life. And I think that's, that can help in a lot of perspectives.
I'm looking forward to the next two segments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got, in a good way, I'm in this moment.
Okay.
I'm also looking forward to the next two segments. Thank you, and we're going to take a little break. We're going to be right back. This is Community Matters on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Hi, we're back. This show is Community Matters on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. And I want to let you know, if you would ever like to come into the studio and be a part of our studio audience, you should email Jay, that's J-A-Y, at thinktechhawaii.com. I'm Donna Blanchard, sitting in for Jay Fidel, and we're talking with Bob Kane, who leads a program called Journey with the Dying at Iolani School. And let's talk about that program, if you would. Now, you've been brought here to the island specifically to set up that program at the school.
Yes.
And tell me about the program.
Okay. Well, the program here at Iolani emanates from a program that was started back in Rochester, New York. I started a program there actually at a school called the Norman Howard School. It's an independent school, a school for students who have learning disabilities, learning difficulties is probably a better way to say it, learning styles that are different, and their districts were not able to find ways to reach these students. So they came to Norman Howard School, where we could provide very specialized training for them, right? And give them a individualized education plan. Now, I was teaching English there, and I found that the students in general had a very low opinion of themselves. And I say that because their language about themselves, they used words like they were stupid, they called themselves retards. They called themselves, just losers. It was pretty sad. And that was because they felt, well, I'm not in a regular school. I've been taken out of my school because I can't hack it with the regular people. So, I'm a loser. So teaching English can be a challenge anyway. So I was hired to teach 10th grade English, and the kids are wonderful, and we're working along. And when I noticed this, I started thinking about, well, what sorts of things could I do in my classroom to address this and hopefully have the kids walking out understanding that they're very special people, very unique people. They have gifts, and the saddest thing would be for them to go unopened. So I thought about hospice because I was also a hospice nursing assistant per diem over at a hospital unit called St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester. And so I talked to my principal at Norman Howard and said, with all of this low self-esteem and such, would it be possible for me to explore taking students who in my class that would volunteer, be able to come with me, and I'd take them up on the floor at the hospice unit, pre-approved, and we could go in and we could meet some people. And these people would be dying, but they would be at a state where they could have conversations. And perhaps maybe by being in that situation, facing that extremity, that these students, if they were able to give that dying person a glass of water or hold a hand or something, that when they walked away from that, they would have some feeling that they did something special that day. And they had a very special encounter that day. Luckily for me, the principal's name was Linda Lawrence, and she happened to be, in her pre-principal life, a nurse. So she said, this is pretty out of the box, this is pretty risky, kind of edgy, but you know what, I'm going to trust you, go ahead. So she said, I said, okay, fine, let's do it. So long story short, took kids there, took them to the bedside. It was a supervised visits, but because I worked on that unit as a nursing assistant, the staff trusted me, and I could make the entree and go into the room with the students. We'd go in maybe 2, 3 at a time. And from that moment, those students just blossomed. And I will say this, and then I'll get right to Iolani, but that population of kids who had all these labels, ADD, ADHD, Asperger's, yada, 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 all these things, the labels come with a certain sort of expectation of attitude and kind of the way you're going to show yourself. You're going to have some symptoms or something there. I never saw any acting out or ADD, ADHD, Asperger behavior or whatever with students. And I did this program at Norman Howard for 3 years when these kids were at the bedside with these folks. I saw kids who readily came in, readily had love in their hearts, were hungry for the touch, And when they were there and they returned especially and got to know these people, even up to when they died, they were sitting next to the bed, completely focused, completely on task, and just beautiful. And the reciprocity across from the bed to them and from them to the bed was something that ebbed and flowed that that has led me into this work in a big way, because something happens in that exchange, especially when somebody actually touches with permission and gets touched back under those conditions. So that program moved along, and then I was hired by the Harley School. I'm not a special ed teacher, and was asked to go to the Harley School in Rochester and start a program there as well. So I had it in both schools. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a teacher to take it over in the Norman Howard School, which makes me sad. To this day, I'm in touch with them, but we don't have a lot of teachers doing this. I have no shortage of students that want to do it. So the program was developed at the Harley School from the Norman Howard School. And at that time, after my first 2 years at Harley, Dr. Cottrell, who is the headmaster now at Iolani School, was at Harley School as the headmaster and saw the program developing there, and asked me when I left Harley to do some other things with a year or so hiatus if I'd like to come to Iolani to start. And I said, sure. So the program here mirrors really the kind of program at Harley School, in that we are there, we have a class that's structured every day. My students take it as a regular course, as you would history, English, whatever.
Is it an elective?
It's an elective, always an elective. Kids choose to take it. I have 17 students right now at Iolani that are taking it. At Harley, when I left, Harley School had about, a big senior class would be 46 kids. I would have probably 43 of the 46, all as an elective. And that's continuing on with a student that I taught there is now taking the course over, and it's the same. So it's a very popular course there, and we're just starting here. So the kids come, they learn about bedside care, and they learn about the physical tasks like a nursing assistant would. I teach them like I was taught, how to turn, how to position, how to change someone, how to clean someone, how to do mouth care. All of that type of intervention, making a bed with a person in it, making a bed without a person in it, helping assist somebody up to the commode and back, catheter care, all of that stuff. But the big piece is using those as tools to cross what I call the threshold, to feel like you have some skill sets, so that when you walk into an area with the dying, you're going to feel like you know some things that you could do and you could be useful, until you start to get used to the person and you get a relationship going. Then all of those tasks become secondary. They're very important, and you just know how to do that. But the big thing is that you're with the person. You're present, you're listening, you're talking, you're with them and accompanying them for that time. And a lot of story is exchanged. A lot of love is exchanged, and very often a student will be sitting next to someone who is no longer responsive, but the last sense to go is hearing, as far as we know. And so we learn how to sit and how to be with that person. And I mean really be there, not sit there and think about calculus or sit there and think about the mall or something else, because the dying can sense that. They know if you're there or not. But holding the hand or whatever is appropriate, and actually finding that by just sitting there and being there, you're doing tremendous work. You know, it's so different. The model is so different than what we are normally taught in our regular lives about being successful. It's all about doing and fashioning and multitasking and all this. This is not about that. This is about doing, is about being and paying attention. And we do a meditative process to some degree in the classroom, and I tell them, I want you to focus on the breath. I want you to focus on your in-breath and your out-breath. Okay? Just do that. And we'll sit for a while. And the reason why we focus on the breath is because, and this is me talking to the students, is because at some point you will be next to a dying person. And that dying person will not be responding to you with words, but they will be breathing. You're focusing on them and watching their breathing. And you can notice things like changes in their breathing rhythms, changes in those patterns. Other changes that I teach them about physical changes during the dying process. And because of your presence and because of your ability to pay attention, you could be the one who gets up from the bedside and goes out to the nurse or whoever's in charge at the place that they're at and mentions these changes and triggers a series of events that could possibly bring the family in time to be with their loved one as they take their last breath. And I also say, sorry if this is a huge burden bequeathed on your shoulders, but I'm hoping that that is not a burden, but it is a gigantic opportunity and honor for you to have the ability to carry out and a huge gift to be able to give if that was to ever happen. So this is why it's important to pay attention. This is why it's important to sit and meditate and be quiet. These are the things in life beyond caring for the dying that are important. If you can act that way and be present and really listen to your life partner, your wife, your husband, your lover, whatever, significant other, and you really, really listen and pay attention to what they're saying to you and they do in kind, I think you got a good shot at a long relationship. That's just, this is what dying and the dying process and understanding it in the past did for us as people in our small towns. And as we sat with our ohana around the fire, multi-generationally, we did listen, we did pay attention because we had to, because we needed each other on such a fundamental level. We didn't have apartment buildings where you don't even know who's in the apartment next to you, let alone above and below you. You knew everybody. So through this, hopefully they find at the end of the day that the course is not about death, it's about life. It's about life, and it's about the celebration of life. And let's not fear this thing called death. Let's embrace life, and death happens to be a part of life. The students get their, and this is a big deal, the students here on the island get their practicum, get their field experience through the grace and the gift of the hospice agencies here on the island. Hospice Hawaii began with us in helping set this up. Islands Hospice, very, very big player. St. Francis, very big player. Bristol Hospice has brought the gift of dying people into the classroom to share story and talk story with my students. All of the Kokuamau, all of Queen's Hospital, it goes on, Straub, all of these places have been just so open to helping. And when I was asked to come here, I'd said, well, we need to talk to the hospice agencies first, because if it's going to be climbing Mount Everest, I think I've kind of been around a little bit, and I don't know if I've got enough energy for that. Nothing against New York. New York's a great place, and Rochester people are wonderful, and the program has flourished there, but it was a hard climb in the first few years. People did not believe young people could do this work. I've not had that here. Now, granted, they know of a program that exists elsewhere, but I wasn't hit with a lot of questions about prove it, prove it, prove it. I was hit with, how can we help, how can we help, how can we help? This is necessary, this is good. So the students go out into the field through the grace and the training of these hospice agencies and a place called Manoa Cottage, which is nearby, that caters to folks that are suffering with dementia and advanced dementia and Alzheimer's, and people do die there and are taken care of in hospice at the facility. So the students go out in the field. I like to get as many hours as I can out there. They're not getting as many hours as I would have liked to have had this year. Iolani students are incredibly busy. And so we're working at that. And this process takes about 3 years to really start to normalize and start to naturalize out into the field. So this is year one, and I can't be happier. I'm more pleased than I am with the kids.
Awesome.
So, and what they do, just to let you know, what they are trained to do in nearly all cases is they can come and they can help assist with the nursing assistants and be patient care assistants. That means they can turn, they position, they bed baths, they can help change people. They do not do anything with the medications here. In Rochester, we have a different situation there where they could actually help medicate too, because they were considered extended family members. But that's no big deal. They know about the medications, they know what to do. But they're with the dying, they're present, And there are many that have been with many people who have died, and we've talked about it. And the key to the classroom and keeping it a healthy place is every time the kids come back into the classroom and they sit down, before we begin, after we've lit the candle, before we begin with anything, we ask, has anybody had a shift? Has anybody has been out in the field? And if they had, they share. And so all of them are in this together, and they're sharing. You know, you might have one sharing from Islands, one sharing from Hospice Hawaii, another one from, you know, St. Francis, Manoa Cottage, and it's beautiful to hear them talk and to hear what they say. They're quite humble. I find more about them from the folks in the houses. Oh, you should have seen your student do this or do that. Yeah, so it's beautiful.
Hold on for just a moment. We're going to take another break.
Okay.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back with you. The show is Community Matters. We're talking with Bob Kane from Iolani, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island. I work in the ER there. But on Tuesday afternoons, I get to come and spend 45 minutes to an hour with Jay Fidel and the ThinkTech staff. They're terrific professionals. They help us to bring some of the leading cutting-edge topics here across our state to you. So you can join us at our show on healthcare in Hawaii to talk with leaders from across all the spectrum of health in our state, or you can join us for any other show where we talk about economic development or tourism or some really eclectic programs too. So really, we'd love to see you here on our show. Thanks for joining us and thanks for supporting us.
Hi, we're back. This is Community Matters on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. I am your host for the day, Donna Blanchard. We're talking with Bob Kane of Iolani, who teaches a course called, well, look, I moved my paper around, Journey with the Dying. And this is something that you have developed.
Mm-hmm.
You started in Rochester, New York, and now this is only the second school that has this program because you're the guy. You're the
So
guy
far,
who makes this
yes.
happen so far. But you know what? I have a feeling your students are going to carry this on. We're going to see a lot more of this.
I hope so. I hope so, yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
like this is so enriching for them.
Mhm.
Can we break down a little bit what the course actually entails, what your syllabus looks like?
Sure, sure. I have 17 students here at Iolani for the first year, and it's a mixture of hands-on lab work. We have a bed and an advanced geriatric mannequin and all of the things that would go along with an end-of-life care situation, whether it's catheters or bedpans or anything like that. All of that's the compliments of Hospice Hawaii and also Straub and Queens Hospital donating to us. And so at the bedside, I start off right away, actually, with getting right into the care itself as a caregiver. What does it take to be a caregiver? I also start right away with the dying process. So they watch a film, actually, that was done in Canada, and it's called Dying at Grace, and it's Grace Salvation Army Hospital in Toronto. 5 people agreed to be filmed who were on hospice at the hospital, end of life. And there are various stages of wellness as they're getting towards death. And then the camera person filmed them all the way to the last breath. So they watch these people, they get a little bit of story about them, and they see the process itself. Before we even get into this, of course, the big thing I do right away, first off, is ask a couple questions. 2 things for the students that I want to know first day and second day. Why would you sign up for such a thing? What is it that you would elect to do this? What is it about this that made you sign up? And 2, what is your death experience? What is your death inventory, including pets? You know, what's your experience with this? And so they start sharing one after the other, and that gets intense. And even here, you know, the Kleenex box is out, kids start crying, and they're crying in front of each other. They're opening up. And that is also a way that solidifies the group together as a group, right? They've become vulnerable. They've agreed to be vulnerable with each other. And that's a necessity to really be working on, right? And they also know that whatever happens in that room stays in that room, right? So they're safe. So once we've gone into that, I say I'm not going to get involved in a lot of the outside pieces about death and dying, the families, the spirituality and everything. We're going to look at really initially, how do we get dead physically? How do we die? What is the process? Now, it's different for everybody in terms of the types of things we go through depending on a disease process and everything else. But we go through a group of things that are fairly common for people along the way, and with some signs that are pretty common and certainly are real key pieces of the puzzle when we start to look at going from a dying process to an imminent dying process, right? So the kids start to see that. And then we do labs and we do simulations. We do things where they have to come up and they'll get some information about the patient or the resident that I create, and then they as a group have to go up on the board and start deciding on, based on this information, you know, what are some things that I'm concerned about that I might want to check out when I have to look at this person, right? I mean, is their skin going to be okay? Maybe they weren't cared for very well. What's going on psychosocially with them, all of this. And then they go, and I set the mannequin up in various ways, and they have to go and they have to do a body assessment on the mannequin in a very dignified, delicate way. So I'm seeing how do they walk in the room? How do they approach this person? What are they saying? What are they doing? Okay, and then what do they see? And then when we're all done, we go over it together, and if there were certain things missed, which initially lots of times there are, then we go back to the missing pieces. Not so much as, gotcha, you didn't see that, but they remember, oh, when you were checking the depends, you just sort of looked, oh, no, it looks okay. Yeah, but if you had undone and pulled it back, you would have seen, if you had looked, there was some stool back up in there, and that needed to be addressed. So you have to be careful when you're looking, you know, and what you're doing. You didn't perhaps cover the person enough in this way, and they were exposed a bit more than they needed to have been. So we need to be sensitive about that. Rather do it in the lab than out in the field. We couple all of this with summer reading, Tuesdays with Maury, which the young people really enjoy. And that really gets them into that kind of philosophical piece about learning about life and living life, carpe diem, all of that. And then the rest is filled with various articles, some other film pieces, especially from Frontline, places like that, about the latest issues in death and dying. We've talked about the recent situation in Oregon with a young lady who decided that she wanted to end her life and had the assisted death there. And so they're talking about some hard issues. So it moves from the hands-on piece to talking about the spiritual side of things and having visiting guests come in, talking about the social, psychosocial pieces coming in. We have people coming in. We had a person come in from Manoa as a social worker and talk. We have nurses coming in to speak. Clergy comes in and speaks. And then we have this.
How much religion does
we do the religion side in this way. I'm a real fan of, I don't know if I call myself a religious man, but there's a beautiful quote in, it's the book of Ruth, where she is told that she can leave her tribe because she wasn't born a Hebrew, a person with a faith in Judaism, but married into it. And she said, no, I'm going to stay, and wherever you go, I go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your God is my God, your people are my people. That's a beautiful piece. I've always looked at that in terms of what we do as hospice caregivers. When you're with someone who's dying, for that time, you're with them. Their people are your people. Wherever they're lodging, you are lodging with them. You are accompanying them in terms of their God is your God in terms of, you're not perhaps changing your faith, but you are accepting, and it isn't about, you questioning anything. If they would like, for me, and I teach my students, if you're with somebody that would want to say the Our Father or something, the Lord's Prayer, and perhaps you're an atheist yourself or agnostic or a Buddhist or whatever, the importance of considering at minimum, being present and bowing your head in reverence as they say it. If you can speak it along with them, or they would like to hear it because they can't speak anymore, or perhaps can't read, whatever it is. You know, we could do that, and it does not mean that you're becoming anything. You're giving a gift. So for that moment, their God is your God, yeah? So we talk about various religions, and the kids do their own paper with respect to picking a religion that is not their own, or a spiritual condition, and also a culture that's not their own, and really researching it in terms of, if you were going to care for someone at end of life from that culture or that faith's tradition, what are some key things that you might need to know to make sure that you don't cause any harm and cause any discomfort, and that you could actually enhance their days towards the quality of their life up into the end, and then share those with the rest of the group, because they too could be out there caring for people. So it's that approach for religion, right? So we make sure that nobody's going in there thinking that they're to be an evangelical or change or have that's not appropriate, right? We don't do that. There's an old saying that some people would say, well, you walk into here, you leave your religion at the door. I don't believe that. I don't think anybody leaves their faith at the door, and you don't have any faith then. You know, you have it, you need to manage it in a kind and caring way. So we go in depth with that, and that's a big piece because existential pain, we talk about pain in many ways: physical pain, social pain and suffering, existential pain, pain wondering about, you know, what's next or not, and all of this, and what can we do, and how can we role play to some degree with people, so that when we're sitting there, we can at least be present with them. We're not fixing anything. We have no answers, but we can be there so that they can be talking to someone who's present with them, and share their heart. You know, most dying people are not looking for answers. They're just needing to be able to speak and to share. So there's that, and then we do a lot with grief and bereavement, a lot, with the idea that students have their own grief issues. They're coming to the table. Some students will come and say, gee, you know, I wasn't allowed to be part of my grandparents' death and dying process, and that I was removed from that, and I've always felt like I was cheated by that. I felt like I was, one student said, betrayed, you know, by that. And so they're going into this work and into this class to be able to go out there and to be there for somebody, you know, and see what that's like, but also see what it's like for that person to receive that kind of care, to go to someone to a kupuna and be able to give that kind of care. So it's an interesting route. It's a plethora of things that we go through.
My goodness, yes. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're
and
welcome.
Going through that. No, I mean, thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing this to Hawaii.
Well,
and thank you for being on the show.
My honor.
You know, I feel a little bit better knowing that your students are out there and you're growing more people like this. I'm really happy.
They do a beautiful job, and we're looking to now. I want to be dialoguing with other schools, and I come from a public school background, and I really want to see it grow into the public schools as well.
Yeah.
You know, and so let's see if there's any place that could happen. It's right here.
It's here.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for traveling on that journey, and I think that's really cool. Okay, thank you for being here. I'd like to thank a few more people here. I'd like to thank our technology engineer, Zuri Bender, who is in my ear, and I give her a different title every time. I'll decide on it one of these days. I would like to thank our floor manager, Emily Inoue Lau, who's right over there. Thank you. And Jay Fidel, who somehow puts all of this together. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.